Continuing with my Star Wars reviews, we have Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones. Like I said in the previous video, this is actually my second favorite out of the prequel trilogy. Um, I like this one because it introduces us to Hayden Christensen as Anakin. I know a lot of people don't like his acting, and I wouldn't necessarily blame it on his acting, more as the writing, because um, the whole trilogy itself has really, I'd say, rough dialogue, like written for. Like the script was, I don't want to say it was poorly written, just George Lucas isn't strong in his dialogue. So, I mean, that affects how it's supposed to be portrayed, because if it's kind of choppy dialogue, that's how it's going to come out on the screen. But Attack of the Clones is definitely my second favorite. I love the relationship that builds between Anakin and Padme. Um, I like how Obi-Wan goes on this little solo mission to Kamino. I like the depth it brings us to kind of seeing a little more of the dark side, and how we have a little more connection with Count Dooku, and how he has that scene with Obi-Wan and he's talking about if Qui-Gon was still here, he feels that he would have joined him, and I think that's such a weak spot, even though it's 10 years later, to kind of hit Obi-Wan with, because I feel like Obi-Wan thinks he knows his master better than Count Dooku did. And I think while Qui-Gon is more of a free will person rather than listening to the Jedi, because he didn't want to be on the Jedi Council, that I don't think he would have gone to the Separatist side and sided with Dooku. But I feel like that's a very intense scene. It's a very low-key intense scene. Um, and you can just feel the drama building. Something I noticed rewatching Attack of the Clones is how Anakin is really arrogant, and he just thinks he can go do anything. He thinks he's invincible. He's like a teenager. Well, he is a teenager, but he's like, we just gotta act now. Like, he chases after the the bounty hunter into the bar. Like, and Obi-Wan tells him, calm down. And throughout the movie, you hear him keep reiterating the fact that it's like, my young Padawan. You're not you're not experienced enough. You may be strong and powerful, but you're still young and arrogant. Um, and that is obviously something that leads to his downfall later on. Um, but it's so true. I didn't count how many times Obi-Wan says my young apprentice or my young Padawan learner. It refers to him being inexperienced, but it's just like constant throughout the film. I feel like I've never noticed that before, until this recent rewatch of it, and it was just like, wow, like Anakin really is arrogant. My favorite fight, I didn't even give this a ranking. A ranking out of 10. See, because I like this better than the Phantom Menace, and I hold it higher because I feel like there's more character depth. I can't speak tonight. I feel like there's more character depth in this movie. I still can't speak. I feel like there's more character depth in this movie, and I don't want to say a 7 is too high, because I feel like 7 is like, it's decent, it's solid. Like to me, The Force Awakens is easily a 7, 7.5, but um, this is more like a 6.8. I feel like it's a 6.8 out of 10. It's a little bit better And there's a little bit more things I like about this one, but I wouldn't necessarily want to give it a 7 because there are still flaws with it. There still are those longer feeling scenes, and you feel like they could have been cut a little more. Um, and it's not necessarily that they should have been cut, but I feel like they could have been fixed with better dialogue. You know, I feel like if we're comparing this to like Quentin Tarantino's films, where his dialogue is spot on and the movie just flows, if we had decent dialogue like that in, say, Attack of the Clones, it wouldn't feel as choppy. It just kind of like you're going, and then it feels kind of rough trying to get through it. One of the big set pieces of that movie was when they bring in all the clone troopers and they're flying them all in, and they show the big wide shot of all the Jedi surrounded, but then you got Yoda coming in with everyone, and then all of a sudden it's like everyone starts fleeing because they're like, we're screwed. And then it kind of just gets flipped on the separatists. Um, that and then leading in the next part leading up to the final battle between Dooku, Anakin, and Obi-Wan. That's one of my favorite fights. I remember seeing. I think Attack of the Clones was the first Star Wars movie I saw um, in the theater. But I just remember seeing Anakin get Obi-Wan's lightsaber when he throws it to him, and he's just battling like dual wield. And that was the first time I've ever seen that, and I was just like, whoa, like he's gonna whoop Dooku's ass, but then he gets his arm cut off, and he gets, uh, I don't know if he gets zapped or not, but he gets thrown over with Obi-Wan, and then it's like, you're like, oh, well, the good guys just lost, and then Yoda comes walking in, CGI Yoda, and then he doesn't hand Dooku his ass, but they have a nice little duel. Yoda's jumping over everywhere. That's that's one of my favorite scenes of that movie. Um, and something that I caught not this past time of rewatching it, but the time before, because I've been paying so much more attention to the Star Wars franchise lately, and all the subtle like musical cues, is when it's the very end of the film and you see the Star Destroyer start rising up, but then you have like the Emperor. I don't know if it's the Emperor's theme, it's the Imperial March maybe theme, but it's like really, it's not really low key, but it's like the main sound you hear, and they're just rising up, and you're just like, oh man, like here we go, like going into episode 3, everything's about to change and get crazy. Like, and there's those little cues throughout the first two movies that if you pay close enough attention to, you'll hear them. And you're just like, wow. When I was younger, I used to really like the Tusken Raider scene when Anakin goes back to Tatooine and he kills the Tusken Raiders that kidnapped and basically are the reason his mom dies. I don't know, it looks like they beat her to death, but um, and he just lets the darkness come in and he just slaughters them. It's like, I think anybody would react that way if um, their mom was kidnapped and killed and died in your arms, and you had the power to do something about it right then and there. I think everybody, 10 out of 10, would actually react in such a way. And especially because Anakin feels it's his fault because he left when in the Phantom Menace, and Jedi's are not supposed to create attachments. That's why little kids are taken when they're very young, because they don't know what it's like to form an attachment. That's why Anakin is so not strong, but his feelings really control him, because he feels a certain way about Padme. He feels a certain way about his mom. He creates attachments, and that's something that the Jedi try to not get the younglings to do, is because they say attachments like lead to the dark side, but if you read up enough on Star Wars and you can, or even watch some YouTube videos, there's videos and videos about how the Jedi were wrong, and it wasn't that they didn't understand the dark side, so they figured it's more of taboo instead of learning about like your enemy. In a sense, it's like if we know nothing, that's just as good. They're like, if we they play ignorance with the dark side. That's why it's like Mace Windu. He has his own form of fighting where he lets the dark side not in him, but he uses the dark side. Not uses the dark side, but I guess he embraces the power that comes with it. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it, but then he uses that against his enemies. He doesn't use it for himself. He uses it as a fighting technique. I don't know what it's called. Star Wars Theory has a really good talk about all of this. That's where I learned a lot of my information about Star Wars. It's a really good channel. Check that one out. Thank you guys for watching. This was my review for Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Tomorrow, Episode 3, we're going to watch and review. And please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys.